guys, it's Emily, and today I'm here to bring you a recent reads video. I finished 5 of the 6 books that I put on my nonfiction November TBR, and the 6th book is Interior Castle, and that's been kind of my devotional book for the month, so I've been reading a chapter a day, and I'm definitely on track to finish it by November 30th. But I thought I would basically wrap up nonfiction November by talking about the 4 books that I've read the most recently, and then I could get started on my Christmas books. And I'm just really excited about my December TBR, but I figured I'd better go over my November reading first. So let's just get right into it. The first book that I want to mention is Dewey, the small town library cat that touched the world by Vicki, Myron with Bret, Witter. This I finished the day before I went on my vacation, so I didn't have to take it with me, but I actually did end up giving my copy to my mom, so that's why I have this library copy. But this is basically Vicki Myron's memoir about her life, but also about her time as the mother, basically, of Dewey, the library cat of the Spencer Public Library in Spencer, Iowa. And at the time that Dewey came to live at the library, it was in the late 80s, and Spencer was going through a depression because farm prices were falling, and a lot of the farmers were having to sell their property that they've had for a long time. And so Dewey sort of started perking up the town and started getting people into the library again, and eventually he became rather famous, and people came up from all over the world to visit him. She talks about, like, there was a video crew from Japan that came to see him, and he was put in a documentary about library cats. So he's a pretty well-known cat. And so she talks about that, and she also talks about her own life and her experiences becoming a library director, and how she escaped from an abusive marriage, and she raised her daughter pretty much as a single mom. So it's a really interesting book, and the parts about Dewey, of course, are really sweet. Vicki talks a lot about how she and Dewey had this, like, bond where they could, like, tell what each other was thinking, which is a little cheesy and did get kind of repetitive at times, because she basically tells you, like, every cute thing that Dewey did. But on the whole, this is a really sweet book, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for an easy nonfiction book to read, or if you really like cats, or if you really like libraries, because this is a really sweet book. I then listened to Bossypants by Tina Fey, and again, I had my own copy, but I gave it away to a little free library already, so this is a library copy. This is Tina Fey's memoir about her time, both portraying Sarah Palin on Saturday Night Live, and then her show 30 Rock, and then there's also mentions of her childhood, and then there's, like, the standard celebrity memoir chapters about, like, beauty and fame and things like that. This was okay. I wasn't, like, super impressed with it. I was expecting it to be a lot funnier than it was, and I didn't really laugh that much at all. I mean, it was entertaining, and I listened to this on the plane ride coming home from my vacation, and it was a good way to pass the time on there, but I can't really say I recommend it. I actually thought Mindy Kaling's book that I read last November was a bit funnier, so this was okay, but it's okay for, like, a car ride or a plane ride, but I don't really recommend it on the whole. It was just an average memoir, and it wasn't, some of the stuff she talked about just seemed kind of dumb and not that relevant, and you're like, really? You really think it's worth putting that in a book? But it was okay, but not great. Then finished Front Page Girls, Women Journalists in American Culture and Fiction from 1880 to 1930 by Jean Marie Lutz. This was a very academic book. This is probably something that you would have to read if you were in, like, a journalism graduate program, because it's talking about, like, the impact that women journalists had on journalism, and then it's also discussing how, like, at this time, 1880 to 1930, the literary criticism movement was sort of becoming really focused on, like, realism, and sort of dismissing journalism, because journalism at that time was becoming, like, yellow journalism, which was where it was all about the scandals and all about the, like, craziness that goes on. And so it wasn't necessarily, like, about the news. It was more about, like, publicity and getting subscribers and increasing the circulation. And so it wasn't strictly speaking about the news. And so this sort of goes through like the different types of journalists, women journalists that were working at this time. It opens with like stunt reporting with a particular focus on Nellie Bly and her trip to the insane asylum. And then it moves on to like Ida B. Wells, who was an African American journalist, and she was really big into the anti-lynching movement, and so it discusses her work, but then it also discusses like the differences between white journalism and female journalists and black female journalists, because white female journalists sort of had this like barrier between them and whatever was going on, because there was this like feeling that white female bodies were like automatically pure and couldn't be damaged and things like that. But the black journalists, of course, didn't have that protection. And then it moves into like sob sisters and reporting on courts and how female journalists were like giving the women's question and the women's perspective, but because of that they were seen as being less serious journalists, even though they were covering like most of the same events that men were. And then it moves into writers that started out as journalists and then how they progressed differently. And there's a particular focus on Willa Cather, because she sort of ignored her journalism background because she was part of this like literary movement that saw journalism as like not as pure and not as respectable as like actual literary writing and fiction and things like that. And then it also, the last chapter is about female journalism in fiction at this time, but that chapter to me wasn't very successful because the main journalist it focused on is Henrietta Stackpole from Portrait of a Lady by Henry James, which I have not read, and so I can't really relate to all the stuff they were talking about in that chapter. But on the whole, it was interesting, but it was very hard to get through because it was very academic and the language was very, not easy to read. I was, constantly putting it down because it was so slow, and it was interesting, but I don't really recommend this. I feel like this book has a very selective audience in the fact that most people aren't going to care that much about what she's talking about, which is, how female journalism, was in contrast to the literary criticism of the time, and then also how the journalists used their self and their bodies to either help or harm the news. So it was good, and I'm definitely going to keep this as a reference book because the notes were really interesting, but I can't really say I recommend this to a majority of people because I do think it's got a very select readership. And then, on the way home from visiting my brother at Thanksgiving, I had finished this, so I decided to start the only other book I had, which was Christmas on the Island by Jenny Colgan. I got this for review from Library Theme in their early reviewers program, and this is the third in a series, the Seaside Summer Kitchen series, and I had not read the first two. I just decided to apply for this book because I had read Colgan's Bookshop on the Corner earlier in the year. I had listened to it on audio, and I had really enjoyed it, so I thought I might really enjoy this. Unfortunately, this was a disappointment to me because it wasn't like most of the, like, there's three main storylines in here, and all three of them really had something about them that bugged me, and it was like, I just didn't really like it. And the setting, the island of Myron, is really beautiful. This is about a group of people who live on this island in Scotland of Myron, and it's way up in the north of Scotland, so it's like really cold and dark all the time at Christmas. And so it's about them celebrating Christmas, and it's about different groups of people that live on the island. And this island is small enough that all of these people know each other, but they have separate groups and there's separate storylines. And it was interesting, and there was parts about it, the setting in particular, that I enjoyed, but on the whole, I found it very annoying in some ways. And so one of the storylines has adultery in it, which I automatically don't like. The other one had a very stereotypical portrait of a Texan who's from Coppell, Texas. And Coppell is it's portrayed as this like little redneck hick town, but Capella is a suburb of Fort Worth, which is a major metropolitan area. So it's not like a hick town at all. So that annoyed me because I'm from the Dallas area and I've been to Capella and I know where Capella is. So to me it just seemed like lazy writing. And then the third storyline had the trope of like the characters just need to have one conversation and then their problems will be okay. Or, well, not okay, but things will move further along. So it was like really annoying in all aspects, and I don't really recommend this. This is a beautiful cover, and again, the setting is really beautiful, but I can't really say I recommend this unless you've already read the other 2 books and you're interested. I don't recommend this if you haven't already been reading the series. So that's all I've been reading lately, and like I said, I'm working on Interior Castle, and then I'll be done with that and moving on to my Christmas books. I've already started 2 of my Christmas books, but, I just felt like starting it, and after Thanksgiving, I figured it's fair game. I'll be back soon with my December TBR, and I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving if you celebrated, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!